Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is BestInSlot. Welcome back to Jurassic World Evolution 2 and our coverage of the brand new Late Cretaceous Dinosaur Pack DLC that just released yesterday. I need to breathe. Whew. Okay, what we're going to do today is sort of like a mini review of the pack, in that what we're going to do is we're going to rank all 4 new prehistoric species, and since the pack is just those species, we're not talking about update 4, we can talk a little bit about my thoughts on the overall pack, but of course their ranking will give you an idea. Before we do that, I'm going to bring up my current ranking. You'll see maybe there's a couple of things I've moved around. As I was looking over it in preparation for this video, Dreadnoughtus and Velociraptor, I thought in particular, were both very low ranked, much lower than they should have been. Now that you've seen that, we can get started with today's brand new species. Let's get going. I'm sorry, are they all no, I think like they're all patternless except one, which is the one we will focus on because that seems harsh otherwise. So our first creature, our lowest ranked unfortunately, is the Barbaridactylus, coming in at position 41. I'll bring in a little page update at the end of this. Let's just get a good look at it at the start of the video whilst we can. I don't dislike the Barbaridactylus at all. You know, it's fine as a pterosaur. It fits well into the game. I think it's relatively well modelled, I'll say that much, and decently well animated. There are 3 main things, however, that give it a somewhat middling score. It's in the top half, that's great. New creatures do tend to get a little bit of a bonus, but there are three things holding it back. First, I'll talk about what I do like. I do like its little squished together body. I think the head is really well, I don't know about the hook and the beak, but I think the head is really well modelled. The crest we'll talk about again in a second, but I do like the patterning on the crest. I think the patterning looks great. And I like the shape of the wings and the way it flies around. And to an extent, I like the effective brutality of its animations. But why is it only position 41? Actually, 44 by the end of this video, but 41 for now. And there's a few different reasons for that. And the first is that it's a Nyctosaurid, right? It's our very first Nyctosaurid in the game, this group of pterosaurs. And it just isn't a very good Nyctosaurid. It misses the key features that make a Nyctosaurid a Nyctosaurus. So my 3 main problems. The first one is the crest. You can see underneath the skin flap here. You know, yesterday I was kind of like, you know, I can see the reason for the skin flap, yada yada. In retrospect, I would get rid of it. The problem with this skin flap, and you know what, we can hit play now, I think. The problem with the skin flap is it robs it of a lot of its uniqueness. It kind of just looks like any other pterosaur now because you've covered up that really unique crest, and that's removed a lot of the individuality. That removes a lot of and that removes a lot of individuality from the creature. The next thing is these hands, these claws. Now, Nyctosaurids are known for another thing in particular, and that's not having these hands here. Because normal pterosaurs, what they do is they actually have 3 fingers, basically. You have 2 fingers here, and then you've got like a super elongated finger that forms part of the wing. But with Nyctosaurids, they don't have that. But the point is, they would not exist on a Nyctosaurid by any stretch of the imagination, so why are they there? It just kind of screams like a lack of research and a lack of attention to detail, and again, it robs it of some of its individuality. It just makes it feel like a default pterosaur, and that's a big shame. The third thing is the lack of fuzz. So in terms of the model, I would say those are my 3 main issues, and they are, I would say, quite big ones. People might think that's a bit nitpicky, but at the end of the day, if it takes away from what the creature actually is, if it stops it looking like a Nyctosaurid, then why have a Nyctosaurid in the game in the first place? You know what I mean? You know, if this was another pterosaur, something else entirely, I'd probably quite like it in some ways. The 4th thing is I find the animations just a little bit boring, unfortunately. Some of them were okay, but the human kill and stuff like that just didn't particularly interest me. All very well done, they always are. They're always exceptionally well made. But again, like with the design of the model, they just feel a little bit half-hearted, a little bit, I don't want to say lazy, because people always pour their time and soul into these things, and they're very talented. It just didn't feel interesting, and after months of waiting, I feel a little bit disappointed with the Barbaridactylus. Coming in at position 25, let me find that skin because I love that skin. Coming in at position 25 is the Australianator. I will say straight up, Austria is growing on me more and more with time. People were quite hesitant about it before it came out. The head shape looked super weird, but the head shape is actually fantastic. And I will say the model in general, I would posit, is much more interesting and more reminiscent of a Megaraptorian, as it should be, than the one for the Barbaridactylus. The colours are interesting. You can have a hyper bright colourful one like we've got right here, or you can have something a bit more tame like this one here. And I think it does suit these slightly tamer colour schemes a little bit more. I don't love the ridging down the back. That's very Jurassic World Dinosaur Crocodilian-esque looking, but beyond that, it's pretty cool. I do wish, now it's up for debate how big the claw on the Australianator would have been, but given it's our first proper Megaraptorian, I would have loved to see this claw just give it another inch or two, really emphasize it. It's one of those big unique features of the Megaraptorian, and I feel like it could be emphasized and pushed a little bit more. Beyond that, I do like the model, I like the sounds. I think it's good to have another dinosaur in this size niche. I think it's generally speaking really well made. It's just it's competing with really strong stuff to get any higher in the list. Austria is one of those ones I think will grow me more in time and will probably break into the top 20. I don't want to sell the opinion that I don't like the Austria, because I'm definitely a pretty big fan. It does, however, again have one big thing holding it back, and again, it's the animations. The Australianator, of course, has these big claws, this one big claw on each hand, and that's part of the Megaraptorian aspect of the dinosaur. And some of the kills are fantastic. They don't, well, there's the goat kill, which is really cool, where it kind of gets onto its back and it claws at it with its feet. Love that. The Gallimimus kill, the Ornithomimid kill, where it jams the claw into the skull of the Ornithomimid, is fantastic. That is precisely the kind of thing I really want to see from a dinosaur like this. But then you get onto the human kill, and it's really, really disappointing. It's super boring. And you get to the social animation, and it feels like one we've seen before. So it feels like it's nearly there. If they just emphasised the unique qualities of the dinosaur a little bit more, we could have had something truly special. I would have loved to see a really interesting human kill that utilises that long Megaraptorian claw, because, you know, it is on the verge of greatness with the Australianator. It could have been a top 15 with cooler animations and a bigger claw, in my opinion. But it just didn't quite make it. I do like how it uses its hands a lot in ambient behaviours and stuff like that. It scratches itself a lot, which is really cool. Again, it's got those long arms, which are important. But this animation feels like one we've seen before. It just doesn't interest me that much. So, a great dinosaur, just needed a few tweaks to push it a little bit further in the right direction for me. Coming in at position 19 is the Alamosaurus, just about breaking into that top 20. Of course, our final creature will push it down into the 20th position, but still broke into the top 20. My second favourite or third favourite sauropod in the entire game now. It might be just below the Amargasaurus. I'll need to look at my list. But yeah, Alamo did okay. So Alamo, I really like the model. I really do. I like the design. I like the coloration. I think the coloration is great. There's some slight issues with the body, but I'm not enough of an expert on this one to go into it, and I think Alamo is quite fragmented in a lot of ways anyway, especially in terms of the heads, which, okay, the head looks a little bit too similar to, say, the Camarasaurus. It's kind of funny, there's a concept art, or like a dinosaur paleo art that someone's drawn online, and this Alamosaurus looks very similar, shall we say. Nearly identical, shall we say. And I wouldn't say it's the most accurate or best concept art out there. I think they could have picked some better work to crib off. But yeah, it's got some interesting details like the spines underneath the neck. I love the sounds it makes. The exit animation as the camera slowly pans up, just to really emphasize how gigantic this creature is, I think is really cool. It's nice to have another large sauropod that's got some interesting features. You know, a lot of them have been very samey, a little bit dull, but here we've got the spines, we've got the sail with that dash of colour. It's unique, it's interesting to look at. Alamo suffers a little bit Because, I mean, also I want to mention and shout out to the social animation, which is pretty interesting as well for a sauropod. I wish it was a little bit more violent, because I always do. But as sauropod one goes, we're actually about to see it, it's not bloody bad. Alamo suffers more than anything from Frontier's own hype, I'm afraid. I don't really know how else to put that. It was, as the Ankylodocus was all those years ago, hyped up as a defensive sauropod, as a tough sauropod, as one that could hold its own. And then, of course, it releases into the game and it gets automatically destroyed by any bloody carnivore it happens to come across. And it's not the Alamosaurus' fault, but when you're built up to be something that can hold its own, to be something defensive, something that looks strong and defensive, you then kind of suffer from your own hype when you don't live up to that billing, which of course the Alamosaurus absolutely doesn't. Still, I really like the design. I accept that not all of it is paleo accurate, yada yada yada, but this is on the right level of the mixing between paleo accuracy and Jurassic World for me. This is the kind of midpoint that I like. And the same is going to be true for our next creature as well. Let's move on. So coming in at position 17 is the Styxosaurus, our aquatic creature. Probably benefiting a little bit from the lagoon update, I'm not gonna lie. But still, I said before release this was probably my favourite creature in the pack, and that has remained true upon release as well. It's got a really interesting patterning on it. First of all, it's you know, completely different than the other plesiosaurs we have in the game. I do wish we were getting something other than a plesiosaur, it must be said, because we've already got several. You know, can we have something a little bit different now? That would be fantastic. Again, that aspect feels a little bit half-hearted to me in some ways, but the actual design of it I really like. The controversial point, of course, are these skin flaps. I do think they could have been done better. I think if they just took these skin flaps and extended them down the body and had them sort of fade out down here, or maybe just got rid of one of them and done that with the top or the bottom, it would have looked a lot better. As it is, it's a little bit cut up, a little bit weird, doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. So I think they could have kept the personality and uniqueness of the Styxosaurus and placated and satisfied other people a little bit more in the process, while still making it interesting for everyone else, which I think is the better way to go personally. But yeah, other than that, I quite like it. I know the tail should be shorter as well, but yeah. I really like the design. You know, it's a little bit below the Barbarosaurus for me still, or is it a little bit above? I can't remember at this point in time. It's around Barbarosaurus. I think I do prefer the Barbarosaurus, so I'll have to make sure that's how it's listed. But I think it's interesting. Of course, we've got the Lux skin as well, which is fantastic. We'll have a look at that in a second. That's a really nice little attention to detail. That's not realistic, of course. Realistically, probably not, but it's an aquatic creature, you know, and those are the kind of creatures we'd expect to have this bioluminescence pattern, so it's the kind of thing you would expect to see in Jurassic World, and that makes it okay for me. I'm very okay with that, to be sure. I want to get across my point with things like the Barbaridactylus. I know I went on about it. My only concern is not accuracy. It is about how well the creature fits into the franchise, fits into the game, yada, yada, yada. And I just think some of the creatures could have done a slightly better job at meeting in the middle of those two facets. I don't need hyper-accurate creatures, but I don't want totally Jurassic Worldified design. You know, we've got a Alamosaurus, we don't need that anymore. Styxosaurus, again, I think breaches that middle point really, really well, just like the Alamosaurus does in terms of having the accuracy to the actual creature, but also having some Jurassic World, Jurassic Park in there as well. Let's check it out at nighttime very quickly. I really like how they've handled the looks for this creature. They've got 3 different look skins, and they've got 3 regular skins, so you can absolutely pick what you want. This is actually my favourite of the Luxes, although the yellow and black one's really cool as well. And yeah, it looks fantastic. It suits it really well. It looks like a sea snake of some description. I think that's what the head's probably modelled on, the neck patterning at the very least. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have much else to say. Styxosaurus kind of suffers in the same way the Alamo does, in that lagoon creatures are just a little bit boring, if I'm honest. I've only really started to clock onto this as a facet, but they don't have social animations, they don't have ambient animations, they can't eat people. The Styxosaurus can't even eat Ichthyosaurus. Styxosaurus can only fight other plesiosaurs and gets eaten by the Mosasaurus. It's huge and potentially threatening and awesome looking, and yet it doesn't hunt or really do anything. I'd love to see a little bit more uniqueness added to these lagoon creatures, because they are a little bit dull on their own, and I think until that's changed, the lagoons even if they've got these fantastic decorations. They really did a phenomenal job with the decorations. I think until the actual creatures themselves have more varied behaviour, the lagoons are still going to feel a little bit like an afterthought, even if they are very much in the right direction. Okay, so I'm going to bring up my final list right now. You can see I did, at this point I was making it. It looks a bit daft because I've done the whole video with the other design, but I thought, I hate this design. I've hated it since I first bloody made it. Let's make a new one. So, redid the list a little bit. You should be able to see the highlighted portion for all our new creatures. So, Styxo comes in at the top. However, I think, if I'm not wrong, this is the lowest ranking overall that I've ever given to a new DLC. Most of the DLCs, like Barbarosaurus, for example, and the Minmi, for example, from earlier DLCs, they bring in creatures that, you know, leap up the rankings really high. I'm trying to remember the Late Cretaceous Pack. Monolophosaurus did pretty well out of that, and Scorpius Rex did pretty well out of that. They've usually got a few creatures in like the top 15, stuff like that. This is, I think, the first time I've ever talked about a new DLC without a top 15 creature. Now, it's worth noting, of course, it's competing against better and better creatures. But I really like the designs of a lot of these creatures, I really do. Barbaridactylus, I would say, is the only one that's flat out disappointing to me. But the whole pack feels just a little damp, a little bit empty to me. I don't know how else to say it. I desperately don't want to be mean. Inevitably, people have put tons of work into this pack, tons of effort, tons of love. I don't want to denounce that in the slightest. Criticism's a really difficult thing to do because I have to express my feelings about it. Of course I do, because, you know, I owe it to you folks at home to be truthful. And if you're maybe on the fence about buying this pack, what I would say is that I think it is the worst DLC Evolution 2 has had so far. The free update is phenomenal. It's really, really good. It is crammed with amazing things. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. It's whether you should spend your money on this DLC. Now, if you want more of this game, I would recommend it. Of course, support the dev team and pour a little bit more money and love into the game and, you know, expand your roster with nearly 100. That's really exciting. But it would be bottom of my DLC list. And I wouldn't say it's particularly close. I would absolutely recommend any of the other DLCs before this one. It just feels a little bit lacking in a way. I think it is in part because of the animations. Honestly, they just, I don't know, they're just, they're really fantastically well made. They've got heft and weight and momentum, and some of them are phenomenal. Like the Gallimimus kill with the Australianator, brilliant stuff. One of my favourite animations in the entire game now, and it suits the dinosaur so well. And then some of them are just so similar to what we've seen before, or so boring, and it's a shame. That's all I'm going to say, it's a shame. But it is what it is. But that's my general views on the pack in a way. I don't think I need to do a separate review. I am satisfied, but a little disappointed. You know what I mean? That's about where I'd put myself. I'm still optimistic for the future. Hopefully there was less work in this pack in some way, because then maybe there's more coming in the December DLC. Fingers are still crossed for a black market pack or something like that. I still cannot imagine a world where the Atrociraptor doesn't make it into this game. I will find it utterly bizarre. And I do not live in that world. I don't even care about the Atrociraptor. It just seems weird. So I'm really hoping December is going to bring with it a black market pack or something like that. Of course, we'll have to wait and see. But I would expect another DLC about mid-December, so keep an eye out for that. So yeah, that's my general thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments down below. Let me know what you think about the pack. I'm trying not to end this on a bum note. I want it to be optimistic. I am still optimistic. The free update is phenomenal. We can focus on that if you want. I think it's really, really good. The lagoon decks, the lighting, the bigger JP3 Pteranodon, although the colour still needs changing, as I've said. I don't know, folks. I don't know. Anyways, that's my ranking. Let me know what you think. I'll see you lovely folks very soon. I will note, again, that I've been harsh on Australianator, and it will climb the rankings. I think when dinosaurs first come out, the animations is like very important to me, because it's this thing I focus on when making my videos, and it's the thing that sticks out to me the most. I think over time, that becomes less important, and I think that's when Australianator will begin to climb up the rankings. That makes a lot of sense, actually, now that I say it out loud. Anyways, thanks for joining me. Throw me a like down below if you enjoyed the video. I'll see you lovely folks very soon. Cheers, much love as always. Bye-bye.